Welcome to Talkin Business. I'm Joe Catrambone, CEO of the Stuart Martin County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm honored today to have a political icon on the show with us today. Senator Gayle Harrell from District 25, is it correct?
Currently is 25. It's going to change, but currently
because
it's
there's
25.
Redistricting going on or
Yes.
something, but it's currently 25.
Currently 25.
I notice you have a red dress on, but you don't
Yes.
have your red running shoes on for your campaign shoes because you got it by this time, didn't you?
Oh my goodness, am
Isn't that-
I fortunate. I am so blessed. I do not have to run. No one filed against me, so I am automatically reelected. And this time it will be District 31. We've had redistricting, and it's changed the district numbers and actually the district area. It is quite a different district, and
It's a lot of it's Palm Beach, isn't it?
yes, I have moved south.
See, yeah, and you would think just because people wouldn't let you go without an opponent, especially the D's.
Oh, I was shocked. Especially given the new area.
Yeah,
I thought for
yeah.
sure I would have an opponent.
I think that speaks volumes for you.
Well, I am so blessed. I thank God every day for that.
I know that has to be I know how you run and you need those shoes. So is it a 6-year term or 4-year term?
No, it's a 2-year term.
Oh, Senate is only 2 years?
No, Senate is 4 years normally, but because of
of the redistricting?
redistricting, half the Senate gets 2 years and half the Senate gets 4 years,
Oh.
so that you don't have 100% turnover every 4 years. So
Okay.
so that's election every 2 years. So those if you drew the short card, you got the odd district, which gave you 2 years. If you drew the long card, then you got the 4-year district.
3 year, okay.
So I
Kind of convoluted, isn't it?
yeah, well, it's, kind of luck of the draw,
Yeah.
what district you get. And then the number kind of corresponds to the next odd number if you draw an odd.
You're always ready for the challenge, huh?
Well, I've had a few campaigns.
Yeah, a
Joe.
couple.
I've had
So-
a few campaigns.
What I'd like to do when I'm, especially in the beginning, with starting out with people is say, I obviously I've known you for 30 some years. Okay, so
Right.
let's tell the people a little bit about yourself, your background, and one of the things I don't think I've ever asked you this, but usually there's a trigger that starts that fire in your belly to
Oh,
run
yes.
for office. So let's tell us a little bit about your background and what that trigger was. Would you do that?
Absolutely. Well, when my husband and I moved to Martin County back in 1971, a few years ago, over 50 years ago, and he started his medical practice. And we, at that point, had 2 kids, had 2 more here. And, we just became very much a part of the community over the many, many years. We were part of the chamber, very involved in community activities. And back in the early 90s, I had 4 kids in the public school system. I was not really happy with what was happening, especially with funding coming from the state. And I also was running James's medical practice, and I owned a mammogram center. And I saw what was happening in the direction that healthcare was going, and that physicians and patients were being pushed to the side, and government and insurance companies were making decisions for patients. And that got me involved in medical politics. So in 92, if you remember,
I remember.
In 92, having been involved in local elections and helping school board members get elected, helping the superintendent of schools get elected, I decided when there was an open seat in District 82, and back then it was before term limits, and so people were in office for a very long time. And when there was an open seat, then a lot of people ran for it. So I was going to run for District 82, but it was a redistricting year.
Oh,
And at the end, in late May, all of a sudden, I am in District 81. But you get that fire in your belly, and you're going to run because you feel like you can make some changes. I had helped get other people elected, and I finally said, I want to be part of the solution. I want to make changes that are really going to impact kids, that are going to impact healthcare. So I decided to run, and it just turned out that I wound up, because 81 was the district I was in, and I certainly wasn't moving. In fact, Tom Warner, who lived down the street from me, was running in 82 as well, and he moved. I would not move. I wasn't moving my 4 kids. I wasn't.
I remember that. I remember Tom moving, yeah.
Yeah, Tom moved. So I wound up running against Ken Pruitt, as you remember.
I do.
And, it was a 8-week race. I lost by 700 votes. And it was such a learning experience. And Ken and I have since become great friends.
Yeah. He's such a gentleman.
He is such a gentleman. But it really taught me so much about running. So I wound up in 2000, term limits had come into effect, and it was an open seat. Of course, anybody who had been in office before for 8 years was termed out.
Mm-hmm.
So Ken was termed out. He was running for Senate, and I ran for the House again. And I had I've had very tough races.
Yeah, you haven't had any pushovers, that's for sure.
Very tough races. I ran again, and very tough race, very tough primary, very tough general. And what helped me win, the lesson I learned, was door to door, talking directly to the people. And that's when I started wearing my red running shoes. 2000.
That's good old grassroots politics.
Grassroots politics.
And people, today people think with the internet and with Snapchat or whatever it is, or the Facebook, they can. You can't do it. You need people like to press the flesh.
Yes.
They like to look you in the eye. They
Absolutely.
Like to hear you. So, and that's why you're so successful and have been so successful, because you do get in the trenches.
Yes.
You don't. You're not afraid to get into the fray. You get into the trenches. You discuss very openly your position, and are willing to listen to other people's positions.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of your strengths. You have many others.
Well, you really have to listen to people to really first define the problem. And people have different ideas about what the problem is. And then you really have to say, okay, how do you solve that problem? And you get different opinions. And at some point, you have to come to conclusion. And you're not going to make everybody happy all the time.
Impossible.
Impossible. Everybody's got their perspective. But if you really look and carefully define that problem, what are the causes? What are the drivers of it? And then how can you work towards a solution? You're not going to change things overnight, but you have to work towards that solution. And as I like to say, you don't eat the apple one bite in one bite. You eat it a bite at a time. So you got to keep working on it.
Good philosophy, yeah. And of course, so much of your success in getting election was Doc.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was your biggest fan, your biggest supporter, your hardest worker.
Oh, my goodness.
He was there.
He was
A wonderful man. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was wonderful.
He was. Let's talk a little bit about Tallahassee.
Yes.
I think we're in a good place.
Oh, I think...
Do you think?
Yes, I think when you look at where the state of Florida is compared to other states, and what we have accomplished over really the last 20 years in Tallahassee, and what we've done with a very organized process of improving our school systems and really elevating instruction in our classrooms, where we have gone in building our economy over the many years, and then also in protecting our environment. For us on the Treasure Coast, our environment is our economy, and we have got to make sure we're doing everything for our water and protecting our rivers and the lagoon. But we also need to make sure we do things like septic to sewer conversions. We put the money there, and it's a partnership with the state and the counties to do it. And where we are in Tallahassee right now in truly pushing the economy and making sure that we're we're improving the school districts, improving our systems, really making sure that we are improving health care, and that we're an open economy, so that business can flourish. And you compare our resources, and the income into the state of Florida now is even greater than we budgeted.
It's
You know,
amazing.
we have a surplus coming in
Amazing.
because we are an open state. And I think it comes from leadership, both at the governor's level, but also in the House and the Senate. And yes, we always don't agree. And yes, we do have some disagreements inter-party, as well as intra-party. But in the long run, probably 90% of the bills pass with 0 no votes.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
And part of that is really that looking at how you can listen to all sides and come to a conclusion that is going to work towards solving the problem. And yes, everybody doesn't get always what they want, 100%, but you have to work towards solution.
Having served in the House and going through the steps to get bills passed, those things that you had to do, what's the difference in the Senate?
Very different. I had 16 years in the House, 8 from 2000 to 2008, and then 2 more. I was out for 2 years, and I'm a Republican. A Democrat had won the seat in 2008, so I was asked again to run in 10, which I did, and then I served from 10 to 18. And 2 different stints in the House, and under different leadership, so you kind of learn how to deal with your leadership. In the House, it's a much larger entity, 120.
Yeah.
Committees are very large. And a lot of it is kind of preordained to some degree. You work on bills, but you don't quite have that negotiation ability as much in the House as you do in the Senate. When you get to the Senate, you have small committees. There's only 40 people. And you have to work your bills because, if you lose one Republican vote, and maybe you need to get a Democrat vote, and, you may have 5, 6 people on a committee. So there's a different level of conversation, camaraderie in working for kind of how we can tweak it and make everybody get something kind of attitude.
Keep everybody happy.
You know.
So, was there a lot of the relationship between the Democrats and Republicans in the House? Was there a lot of was there a wall, or was it open? I mean,
it's much more open in the Senate. In the House, it's a little more structured.
It is structured,
very
yeah.
structured. The difference, I would say, is in the Women's Caucus. There's a little bit more of that back and forth within the Women's Caucus.
agreeing. with
Yeah. There's some issues we're never going to agree on,
Yeah, of
and you
course.
just know that ahead of time.
Yeah.
And you don't go in that direction. But if you really are working to solve so many problems, you can work across party lines.
Yeah, and I've seen that quite a bit. That's why, I ask specifically as someone who worked through it. I'm looking in from the outside, looking
Right.
in. You were involved in it. It's always how convoluted, how much of an issue is it to have a bill of yours passed to get support. Obviously, first of all, you've got to get a co-sponsor, right?
Right.
Okay. So is that collaboration while you're doing the bill, or do you do the bill and go to a co-sponsor and say, hey, here's what I have in mind?
You have to work a bill, and it depends on how controversial it is. And if you're making major changes, A good example would be the early education bill I did. It took me 3 years to pass the bill.
That's patience, isn't it?
3 years. Because we were restructuring early education in the state of Florida. And you have a lot of vested interest. You have a lot of parties out there who, maybe don't want to change. But we really felt, and Erin Grawl was my house sponsor, and she was very involved in early education. I've been very involved in education issues as a former teacher, and also having 4 kids who went through the public school system, and now 8 grandchildren. I've been very involved in that. But changing, really making the major systemic changes in it, moving the early learning coalitions and the early learning under the Department of Education instead of having it as a small standalone agency. Or originally it was under workforce. So recognizing education starts at the very beginning and it goes all the way through. So we really needed to take that longitudinal view of how a child learns, and step by step making sure that it is all working together, and that we have a system in place that's going to be in the best interest of the child, and the learning styles and the ability of each child to achieve their maximum. So 3 years in the making, and when we finally passed it, it was such a hallelujah day, I can't tell you.
Yeah, that's a milestone, isn't it? Yeah. It's really interesting how that works, and most people have no clue.
No.
And
No.
I find it fascinating. A lot of people don't even care about how it happens or what happens, but it's in my DNA to care about that.
Well, the same thing is true on our water issues. For us, water is a key issue. And
economic engine.
The economic engine. And I remember back in 2003, 2004, working with Jeb, and we had the big Okeechobee, Accelerate Okeechobee, Lake Okeechobee, looking at improvements there and stopping the releases and dealing with a whole variety of things. So you have to make that commitment for long term.
Yeah.
And where we were back when I was first elected in 2000 versus the amount of money we are putting into restoring our rivers and stopping the releases. And when I passed Legacy Florida in 2015, and that gave us the guaranteed funding source, was a game changer. Because every single year prior to that, you had to go back and fight for the money.
Oh, it was horrible. Remember beach renourishment, the inlet.
Yes.
It was a battle every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
So, we've built those systems, and that's a long-term process. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. And speaking of, I remember the dike.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was. I'm so happy. I like to fish out at Lake Okeechobee, so I go out there a few times a year, and I could see the progress. But that's coming along, and I don't know when completion is, but it's not an issue anymore.
Right.
And of course, now I think they're keeping the lake down under 15 feet now, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah, so that makes a
Well,
difference.
they're working on. They still haven't approved the new LOSUM agreement, regulation schedule. That's still in the works. It's almost there, but still in the works.
And through all of that effort and everything else, and I know we've been very fortunate. The Lord has been very fortunate with our weather, but our river is. I mean, you can see the bottom. It's blue. It's beautiful.
Yes.
That so much of that is all a result of all of that work that you all did.
Yes.
During those days, and we're thankful for that. And I think it continues on. And Brian Mass has done a wonderful job.
He's done an amazing job, and
it's
and again, it's that coordinated effort. You have to have the feds. You have to have a champion at the federal level.
Yep.
You have to have champions at the state level, both in the House and in the Senate, and then you also need the locals in the septic to sewer conversion and those
Critical.
kind of things that have a direct impact on our water quality are key. So it takes everybody working together to make it happen.
I'm going to ask you a loaded question.
Okay.
What's the consensus in Tallahassee? Is our governor going to run for president?
You know, I would hate to lose
Me
him
too.
as our governor, but I would say I think there are opportunities there for him, and a lot will be dependent on what happens in the next 6 months. I think certainly he's got to get reelected as our governor. I assume
I can't imagine he won't.
I'm assuming that's going to happen. I count on it every day.
Yeah, I can't imagine this.
But you know, he's bright, he's young, he is very much economically driven. Is, you know, what you can do to build the economy, not just of Florida, but he can take that to the federal level. Certainly his environmental record and what he's doing on the environment is so wonderful. I'm pleased really about how he approaches things. And, you know, in education, where we've come in education in Florida, and that started really with Jeb. But it's been progressive along the way. And we've had good leadership in our governors to continue to do that. So Florida's the model for the country.
It's amazing.
You know, so you want a governor to become president who's really has shown you how to do things? You know, we'll see where it goes. I'm not prognosticating.
I hate to lose him as governor.
Yes.
But I think he'd make a great president. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about we missed?
Well, I just so appreciate everything the Chamber does.
Well,
the
thank
Chamber is the heart of the economy of Martin County. And I want to thank you and all the members of the Chamber for so many years in working really to build the economy of Florida. And, you know, small business is the heart and soul of Florida. And as a legislator, it's our businesses that give us the wherewithal to have the tax dollars to run the state. So I want to thank you.
Well, and in the same token, you are such a strong supporter. And I know that anytime I have an issue, that anytime that there's a problem, I can come to you, and it's going to be handled fairly and quickly, and your staff is wonderful.
Yes.
Karen is, I mean...
Yes, my staff is wonderful.
Yeah, it's like me, I call my staff the dream team, you know,
Yeah.
they just, and you have a great staff, so... So thank you for all you do, and I know that you put so much of your heart and soul and your time and effort into representing us, and I think you do a great job.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I
Thank
appreciate
you.
everything the Chamber does.
Thank you. We'll have you back again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime.
Thank you.